Tasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I am very grateful to have this opportunity to be with each of you this evening. And I thank you for coming. I was asked to speak on the subject of skin-deep spirituality. I don't know really what Gadadhar Pandit means by that, but I'll try to speak on whatever comes to my mind. I believe you are expecting a cooking class. So I'll begin by saying something about cooking, and then try to make a connection. About 900 years ago, there was a disciple of a teacher who asked his teacher, what are the true qualities of an enlightened person? Now this is a long story, but I'm going to make it very short. The teacher said, although I am your guru, I know someone who could answer it even better than me. So you should go to a place called Tirumala or Tirupati, and you should ask Ananta. Now, it's about 800 kilometers away. And 900 years ago, there were no buses, and no trains, and no planes, no taxis. He had to walk through jungles that had tigers and snakes and mosquitoes. He had to cross rivers. He had to climb mountains, through valleys. But he was determined to get the answer of his question. And finally he reached there. And when he got to the place, he saw that this teacher, he lived on the top of a mountain, and he had to climb 7 mountains to reach that one mountain. And finally he made it. It took him well over a month of walking. When he reached the top of the mountain, he met Ananta and asked him this question. What are the real qualities of an enlightened person? And Ananta said, let me think about it. I'll answer your question later. So he was there, going to classes, doing gardening, washing everything that was around that was dirty for 6 months. And finally there was a big festival, and thousands of people came. And he served everyone. And when he sat down to eat, Ananta said, serve the next batch, then eat. He did that about 5 times. By this time everyone was gone. They sat down to eat. And Ananta came up and said, I believe 6 months ago you asked a question. What was your question? He said, oh, yes. I've been waiting for you to acknowledge me. What are the true qualities of an enlightened being? He said, an enlightened being is like salt. Is like a chicken. Is like a crane. And is like you. That's all I have to say. And he walked away. Now this man was really bewildered. What does salt, chickens, cranes, and me have to do with an enlightened person? But that was all he was willing to say. So he walked down the 7 mountains, crossed over about 20 rivers, walked through miles and miles and miles of forests. Another month, he finally reached back Sri Rangam, where he came from. He met his guru. And his guru said, "Oh, did you ask Ananta your question?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Well, tell me, what was his answer?" He's told me an enlightened being is like salt, like a chicken, like a crane, like me. And his guru clapped his hands and jumped in the air and said, "What a beautiful answer, fantastic." What do you mean by that? Well, I don't understand. What does this have to do with enlightenment? It's all right. He said, "Let me explain." He said, "What is the quality of salt? If you put, I'm sure you learned this in the cooking class, if you put too much salt in a preparation, it's spoiled. And if you put too little salt in a preparation, it's tasteless. There has to be a balanced amount of salt. An enlightened person is balanced. This is very important for today, in the world we live in. Human tendency, due to this, in Sanskrit it's called ahankar, or the false ego. We have a tendency to go to extremes. Why? Because it's actually psychologically easy to go to extremes. To either be black or white. But what's in the middle of black and white takes actually a lot of thoughtfulness and a lot of sensitivity. It takes balanced thinking. When it comes to spirituality, the tendency, either we become fanatics, sectarian, or we become so absolutely, totally liberal that we don't have any spirituality at all. We have a tendency to think that my way is the only way. Now, I'm going to get back to this story, but I'm going to tell you another story. Years ago, 1971. That was kind of a long time ago. I was about 20 years old. And I was on a journey looking for spiritual truths. And as Pandit already explained, I hitchhiked from London to the Himalayas in India. It took me 6 months. And it was a very dangerous journey, actually, because I had no money, I didn't know anyone, but I had this calling in my heart. And that calling was so real, and so deep, and so meaningful. I really was willing to live and to die, but I had to follow that calling. It began when I was a child, but it reached a crescendo when I was sitting on a mountain in Crete, living in a cave with my friend, when I was praying to the divine, "Please show me the way." Unless I understand really who I am and what my real relationship is with God and with other living beings, then my life is so shallow. I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow older, but unless I understand the meaning of life, it's like building a house on shifting sand. I heard Martin Luther King say when I was a teenager that if you do not have an ideal that you're willing to die for, you actually have nothing meaningful to live for. And I believed that. I want an ideal that I could live for. An ideal that I'm even willing to die for. When I was young, looking for that ideal in the 1960s, when there was a Vietnam War, when the African American people were literally imprisoned in the ghettos. Although there were legal rights, they had no social rights to get out. You're born there, 99% you will die there. It didn't make sense to me. We talk about liberty, we talk about freedom, but we're so selective in who deserves it. So for me, the ideal was civil rights and protesting against a war I didn't believe in. I joined the counterculture, better known as the hippie movement. But then I saw we were revolting. I was at civil rights marches and I was stoned and thrown bottles and horrible words by my own white brothers and sisters because I had a different belief than they did. And when demonstrating in Grant Park of Chicago, I was tear gassed by police who were charging me with clubs and beating all my comrades. But I was a pretty fast runner in those days. But then I came to the realization that the people who are demonstrating, my colleagues, really had the same issues as the people we were revolting against. There was also a lot of ego, and a lot of we're right and you're wrong and all of this other stuff. And I started to really question. So many of the heroes of our generation were dying of overdoses with drugs. What really is that ideal? And as I read books and met people, I came to the conclusion that that real meaningful ideal is within everyone's heart, and we have to find it there. Other people can help us, but ultimately we have to find it within ourselves. It's something very deep, very real, and very spiritual. And I yearned for that. And the more clues I was discovering, through histories, through books, through meditation, through prayer, the more I was getting glimpses of it. And it was like fuel that was making that fire of desire grow hotter and stronger. And it was really consuming everything that I thought was meaningful in life previously. Until on this mountain, in the Isle of Crete, of Greece, I was praying, I was meditating, I was studying, and I heard a call within my heart. 3 words completely changed my life. Go to India. So I was with a friend who I grew up with from childhood. We were staying in a cave. That was fashionable in those days, to live in a cave. It still is, but not too many people like that fashion. So I told him I'm going tomorrow morning. He didn't want to come, so I left and hitchhiked through Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, came to India, who was traveling and searching and looking, studying under many saintly people. While in Europe, I was studying with rabbis and Franciscan monks, and in the Middle East, under Islamic saints, and in India, under yogis and sadhus and lamas, and Mother Teresa, Dalai Lama, and many very famous and many unknown sages of the Hindu tradition. Studied Buddhism, Hinduism, yoga. And at one point I was living on the bank of the Ganges in northeastern India. And I had an old friend. Old means I didn't know him long, but he was old. I was 20, he was 85. But we were best friends. Now that was very nice to me. Actually, when I was living as a sadhu, or a wandering holy man in the Himalayas, and I was 19, 20, and 95% of all the people I was meeting and making friends with were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And when I lived in America, anyone over 30, there was a massive generation gap. When my parents asked, "What did you do today?" that was like a very threatening question. I don't know if you have this experience in your generation, but in the 60s it was like that. All they wanted to do is they wanted to know about me because they loved me. But somehow our generation took everything very, very suspiciously. Please, what did you do tonight? You came home so late. And my heart would go, why are they asking this question? Why are you always asking these questions? Because we love you. That's not a good answer. Well, here I was, very best friends, revealing my mind, hearing minds like real colleagues with people 85 years old. And he used to teach me so many things. He was a Hindu man, very devout devotee of Ram, one of the great deities of the Lord. But every day, he would take me to his best friend. He would take me to an X-ray clinic, where his best friend owned that X-ray clinic. His name was Muhammad, and he was an extremely devout Muslim. And the three of us would talk about our spiritual experiences and share them and inspire and enlighten one another. And I could see the love between these two people. Just a few months after this, there was a massive, full-scale war between India and Pakistan, which was really between Islam and Hinduism in one sense. I was in India during that war. Where I was staying, they cut out all the electricity at night so that the airplanes couldn't see the lights and bomb people. I'm serious. I heard bombs going off all the time. So one day while sitting on the bank of the Ganges, I asked Narayan Prasad, my old friend, how is it in a country like India, where there's so much communal conflict and hatred and suspicion between Muslims and Hindus, that you and Muhammad are best friends? Like brothers. I'll never forget the answer he gave me. It's 39 years later. If you give me permission, I will share it with you. Permission? Thank you. He said, if a dog has a master, the dog will always recognize the master, whatever dress, because the dog knows the master. Sometimes the master is dressed in a tuxedo, sometimes in a suit and tie, sometimes in a t-shirt and blue jeans, sometimes in underpants, sometimes comes out of the shower and he's naked. But whatever dress the master wears, the keeper wears, the dog recognizes. So if we cannot recognize the object of our devotion when dressed in different ways for different people at different times, according to different religious, historical revelations, if we cannot recognize that this is my master, this is my object of devotion, when that object of devotion appears different to different people in different ways, he said, we are less than a dog. We have so much to learn from a dog. Even if we're PhD graduates of Columbia University or any other university, even if we're great scientists or great theologians, it's a simple truth. Why is it that there's so much conflict among people who are aspiring for peace and truth? One time I was giving a lecture in Bombay to about 500 or 600 students in a university, in an auditorium. And they could be really challenging. You are all very sophisticated, dignified students, but these were very, I'm not saying they weren't sophisticated or dignified, but they were very insubmissive. So I was trying to give a nice little class. And when it came to questions and answers, one man stood up, a student. He said, "Don't talk about spirituality. If you want to, as far as I am concerned, the only hope for the world is when all the governments of the world forever ban any spiritual movement or any religion." Now the students were really fired up when they heard him. They were like, "Oh, yeah." There was about 600 of them, and it was me. And then he began to elaborate. He said, at that time, he said, in Punjab, the Sikhs and the Hindus are fighting. In Sri Lanka, the Hindus and the Buddhists are fighting. In places in Southeast Asia, the Buddhists and the Christians are fighting. In Lebanon, the Christians and the Muslims are fighting. In Israel, the Muslims and the Jews are fighting. In Ireland, the Protestants and the Catholics are fighting. And he said, and in your country, in America, everybody's fighting. We have a reputation, you know. So what is the use? If we want peace in the world, and look at all this terrorism. You know, in the Crusades, there was massive terrorism of the Christians to other religions, including the Jews and others. And to gain Israel, you know, there was some things that went on. And there were terrorists between Buddhism and Hinduism. And now look at the world today, how terrorism is changing everything about life, especially when you're traveling, especially here in New York City. We saw what happened with the World Trade Center. Thousands of people, innocent people, women, children, just working men, old, young, killed in the name of God. There has been wars simply in the name of God. So why? When he asked this question, he was so convinced, I had to agree with him up to a certain point. We should understand, when we have ego, what is this ego? This ego creates a need within us to be the center, to be the important one, to be better than others. And then we superimpose this ego upon our nationality, and we want our nation to be the best, our race to be the best. But it's most dangerous when this ego is applied to religion. Where I'm the best. Why? Because my religion is the best. And in order for my religion to be best, yours has to be wrong. I have to be right. Now with nationalism, people, during World War II, Hitler convinced his people, we are the Aryan race, we are the supreme God-given people to the earth, and these other races are inferior and they're dangerous to the world and they must be exterminated. Although, when there's political ego, it doesn't take absolute proportions. But when you apply the ego to God and spirituality, it takes absolute proportions. In other words, I am defending the eternal truth of God. And these people are endangering us. So we can justify terrorism. We could justify exterminating races. We can justify practically anything if we add the tag of God to it. And it's very convincing and stimulating to people to hear these things. So it is very dangerous. But the problem is not spirituality. The problem is not religion. The problem is this ego, where we have to feel ourselves superior to others. We have to feel ourselves right. In order for us to be right, others have to be wrong. It sounds ridiculous, but that's what's driven the human psyche to a very large extent since the beginning of time. If it's not about religion, there'll be another excuse to fight, to kill, to prove that we're right. But actually, what really is spirituality? Now we're going to get back to the salt. An actual enlightened person is balanced, doesn't go to extremes, understands, like in cooking, too much or too little. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a beautiful verse. It says that an enlightened person does not eat too much or eat too little, sleep too much or sleep too little, is balanced in recreation, and balances one's spiritual practice, balance in one's education, balance in one's occupation, balance with one's domestic responsibility with family. All of these things have to be balanced properly. And especially balanced in one's own identity. Not to be a fanatic, not to be an extremist, and not to just be lukewarm and not spiritual at all, in the name of God, or in the name of whatever. Another quality of salt is salt gives so much. Salt brings out flavor, but remains hidden, in the sense that Pandit has brought you so many good foods, yes? Now, I'm sure some of you, when you like something, you say, oh, this is excellent spices, excellent grains, excellent vegetables. How many have, be honest, how many of you have said, after eating a preparation, the salt in this is fantastic? Please raise your hand. I was hoping nobody would raise their hand. I've never done it. The salt's bringing out the flavor and everything else, but nobody notices it. The salt doesn't expect praise or blame. If there's too much, you get blame. If there's too much salt, salt has ruled this preparation. If there's too little, there's no flavor, where's the salt? But if it's just right, nobody notices. Nobody cares. Nobody thinks about the poor salt. But an enlightened person is like just the right amount of salt. Doesn't expect credit, doesn't have an ego. Just wants to make everything else good. Unselfish. Not about myself, but about how I can create a better situation for others and for the world. Now, we can speak much more about salt. But now I'm going to go to the chicken. How many of you would like to guess how an enlightened being is like a chicken? Please raise your hand. Can you use your imagination? Okay, it seems like either you're hungry for the food or you want me to say something. His teacher, he explained, let me now tell you about the glory of a chicken. A chicken will go to a dustbin where garbage is scattered. And the chicken may knock down that dustbin, and all the garbage and all the trash and all is spread out on the ground. And the chicken will be looking for any single seed. It will completely disregard all the other stuff and find that seed and eat it. Yes? And then look for another seed and another seed. Similarly, in an enlightened person, and these are universal truths. We're not speaking of this religion or that religion or no religion. We're talking about enlightened people. According to Sanskrit, is Sara Grahi. Grahi means one who seeks, and Sara means the essence. An enlightened person is one who seeks the essence. Even in all kinds of trash, is looking for that seed. There's another example. There's the fly. If you have a beautiful rose garden, the fly doesn't care anything about the roses. just bzzz, looking for one little drop of excrement. Yes? Human excrement or animal excrement, as long as it's nice and juicy. And the fly would just zero and zoop and suck the sweet nectar of that excrement. That's the way flies are. You've all seen it. If you have a healthy body but one little cut, the flies will just go right to the cut and just the infection. And then there's the honeybee. The honeybee could be in a whole sewage area where there's large amounts of excrement. And if there's one flower growing, the honeybee will focus right on that flower and drink that nectar. Every great spiritual path throughout the history of humanity has been bringing people to understand, to seek, and to realize the essence of life. Well, what is that essence of life? That within the heart of every living being is love. Love for God, and compassion and love for all living beings. Love for God's creation. And we can find that in the Judeo religion, in the Christian religion. The first and great commandment is to love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the first and great commandment. Everything else you do, everything else you believe, all the rituals you perform are meant to bring you to that realization. And if it doesn't bring you to that realization, you've missed the whole point. There's a beautiful verse in the Vedas, Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes whatever dharma, whatever spiritual path you may have, whatever occupation you may have, if in the end it does not awaken a taste for loving devotion to God and to all living beings, you have simply wasted your time. Now, according to time, place, and circumstance, there's different languages. Some religions are Greek, some are Hebrew, some are Arabic, some are Sanskrit, some are Pali. Some are various others. But those are the languages of people at the time and the place. And there's different dresses. And there's also different rituals. Some people are very much against rituals. And I don't blame them, because people become so stuck in the ritual. If you have a different ritual than me, then you're not approaching the same truth as me. But what is a ritual? A ritual is like an envelope. What's important is not the envelope. What's important is the content of the envelope. Yes, if you get a nice envelope, what you really want to see is what's the message inside. What is the intent of our heart? What is our goal of performing these, whether it's rituals, whether it's meditation, whether it's chanting, whether it's kirtan, whether it's prayer, whether it's namaz, whether it's studying of scripture? What is our intention? If it doesn't bring us to the understanding of our relationship with the essence and the essence within me, if it doesn't awaken love and peace and fulfillment and satisfaction and neutrality toward other living beings, neutrality in the sense of not discriminating, Is it spirituality? Now, I'm a Swami, which is like a Hindu monk. One time I went to a Gethsemane, a Trappist Christian monastery in Kentucky. And the monks were telling me that from their perspective, the real level of religious dialogue, spiritual dialogue, is people who have gone deep enough into their own tradition that they have gone above sectarian, judgmentalistic faith. If we love God, if somebody's loving God in another way, we should be happy, not threatened. If we're threatened, that means it's not about love, it's about ego. It's about insecurity. It means we haven't really found it. So yes, we could learn so much. Even the greatest swamis and cardinals and rabbis and lamas could learn a lot from the chicken. The simple little chicken that's just looking for the essence. Okay, it's time to end. Oh, I have just gotten my curfew set. So I guess I can't talk about the chicken or the salt anymore. But I would like to share this idea that there is a universal principle. And how do we find that universal principle? The Bhagavad Gita, let's compare Bhagavad Gita with Bible. Jesus says, what is the use if you gain the whole world if you lose your eternal soul? And the Bhagavad Gita explains, Vijyavanaya sampani brahmani kabihastini suni chaiva swapakiche panditasamadarsha. That essentially, we are this eternal. We are not just a body and a mind. We have three identities. We are this body, in one sense, which is made of gross matter and chemicals. More subtle than the body is the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. You can't see a thought. You can't touch a thought. You can't taste a thought. Some people say, show me God. Show me the soul. If you can't show me, I don't believe it. If I can't see it under a microscope, I don't believe it. But can anyone see a thought under a microscope? We might be able to see the symptoms of the thought, but we can also see the symptoms of God and the symptoms of the soul. So this idea, if I can't perceive it with my gross senses, I don't believe it. Factually, most of what we believe, every one of us, is things that are inconceivable to our gross senses. But we believe because it's logical, because it makes sense. So subtler than this body is the mind. The mind is that invisible aspect within us that's, although it's so subtle, it can't be seen, it can't be felt, we see what it can do to our life. We all have the experience of what the mind can do. A little thing, it can magnify it into something so inconceivably overwhelming. Yes? Our attractions, our aversions, that's not about the body, that's about the mind. Our passions. But subtler than the mind, because the mind's always changing, is the witness of the mind. That ever-present witness that's watched. Just like if you're sitting on the bank of a river watching the flow of the current of the river passing, you're the witness. So similarly, If we get caught in the river, then everything the river does, it either makes us feel nice or makes us feel really miserable. Yes? But if you're on the bank watching, then you can enjoy whatever's happening in the river. When the witness identifies with the mind and with the body, then it becomes overwhelmed by the experiences of life. But when the witness realizes that I am someone separate, I am watching, I am in a stable position, then we could watch the flow of the mind, we could watch the changes of the body, we could watch the transitions of the world, and be stable. Because we know who we are. We understand our own essence. And the Bhagavad Gita explains that we are the Atma, the living force within the body and the mind. We are seeing through our eyes, tasting through our tongue, hearing through our ears, smelling through our nose and feeling with our flesh. We are thinking through our brain and loving through our heart. But the heart, the brain, the flesh, all these things, when that living force leaves at the time of death, like a car without a driver, what can the car do? There's no consciousness. We are that consciousness. And according to every great spiritual tradition throughout history, and all these great enlightened beings, that force is spiritual. It is not material. It is eternal. And Satchidananda, its very nature, is full of knowledge and full of bliss. And what is that bliss? The bliss of love. The bliss of compassion. And I quoted a verse from the Bhagavad Gita where it explains what is the definition of a learned person. One who sees everyone with equal vision. Whether one is a man or a woman, or an Asian, or a Caucasian, or an African, or an Oriental, or whether one is rich or poor, of a particular religion, or a particular nationality, or a particular economic sector, one sees that beneath the body and the mind, the essence of every living being is a spiritual spark, part of God, a brother, a sister, conditioned by the mind and conditioned by the body in various ways. But this is what it means to look for the essence. Look for the spiritual essence within everyone, which is good, which is pure, which is perfect, but covered by all kinds of what we call karmic or conditioned natures, according to the choices we make. Whether one is a human, or an elephant, or a cow, or a dog, or a cat, or a tree, wherever there's life, we respect that life. We honor that life. Because we understand the soul within ourselves, we understand our relationship with the soul in that being. And there cannot be sectarianism. There cannot be hatred. There cannot be judgmentalism. If these things are there, then it's not really spirituality at all. It's not religion at all. It's just egoism in a guise. The purpose of every real spiritual path is to empower us in this way, to be instruments of love, instruments of compassion, seeking the essence in every situation. Not only with other people, but with circumstances. One who seeks the essence, whether something pleasing or unpleasing comes upon us, what is the opportunity I have to grow in wisdom, to grow in my strengths? Because obstacles are the greatest stepping stones to higher realizations and higher talents. Most of the great people that we read about in all fields of life went through great struggles. The struggles are what make people great. We have that choice. Ernest Hemingway wrote that everyone in this world is broken in many places. That's just the way the world breaks you in many places. But some people become stronger in those broken parts. And other people get weaker. That's a matter of our choice. To seek the essence, to seek the opportunity, to seek wisdom. Seek and ye shall find. And this is what real spirituality is. In my own search, in my own path, when I've met people of all different religions, I've chosen one because I found that to follow a particular path is necessary. But I also found that real spirituality, real religion, is not about being a Hindu, or a Muslim, or a Jew, or a Christian, or a Sikh, or a Parsi, or a Jain, or an agnostic. It's about finding within ourselves that spiritual essence and learning to love God. And in that love, to be an instrument of that love, to show compassion to all living beings. That's all. That's what spirituality means. And that's all paths are ultimately leading us to that. If we follow with humility, with gratitude, and with sincerity. Otherwise, the so-called cure aggravates the disease instead of curing it. And that's what we so often find in the world today. So rather than reject the cure, we reject the misuse of the cure and accept the proper use, which is universal, non-sectarian, the essence. And this way, all of us, whether we're swamis or housewives or farmers or engineers or scientists or doctors or business people on Wall Street, whatever we may do, or politicians, if we seek the essence, we can find the treasure of the love within ourselves and the fulfillment and the ideal that we're all really seeking in our very life. Thank you very much. Is there time for a question, or should I go away? It's really a pleasure to have this opportunity to serve.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.